To keep the main thing the main thing is the critical issue for us. We've got to realize that making disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation is what we're about right now. And I think it is serving us so that our missional purpose is clear. We know where we're at, what we're supposed to be doing. And the creation and resourcing of vital congregation is what the conference and what all of us are here for today, even though some of us serve at the local level. Many of you are officers of the church, of your annual conference, through your roles and positions. But to bring in a Gil Rendell adage, it is to be steady in purpose, but flexible in strategy. There are our Wesleyan heritage and theology which we cannot jettison, that will always be a part of us. And this is prominent when I go into not only ecumenical, but interfaith dialogues. When I'm participating with other faiths, I like to ask the question, or start with the first question of, what is non-negotiable for you in your faith position? And it's very clear for me, in those settings, it's my allegiance to Jesus Christ as Savior and Lord. I just put that straight out. I cannot give up Jesus Christ as the triune God. And they're always cool with that. The Buddhists and the Hindus and the other world religions always say, oh, that's no problem for us. The Muslims, he's one of our wise sages and prophets, so they have no problem with it. It's our Christian response to their non-negotiables that's the problem usually in our settings like this. So it tells us something about ourselves, by the way. But steady in purpose is we keep our mission statement and our direction, but the strategies all have to be on the table now. Because with the first presentation, everything has to change strategy-wise. And those old strategies are simply not working because they're a product of a system of a bygone era. What we now need is widespread experimentation and innovation. And what our task partly is to do is to craft this culture of innovation and risk-taking. And what it means is we must look for younger generation, which has this intuitively, by the way, as adapters, entrepreneurs, and risk-takers themselves. But old ways die hard. And you all know this, that some of you are facing old cultures that, for the boards of ordained ministry, this risk-taking is really a challenge for you because we have a system that avoids risk. We have a system that's risk-averse. And entrepreneurs and those that are on the edge often don't make it through our board processes, right? Let's be honest with ourselves. One, they recluse themselves because they're too impatient with our process. It's just too wieldy, and they could go get ordained in another denomination or in an independent church in an instant, and have the patience to work through it really takes a great deal of wisdom and maturity, and some of our young entrepreneurs just don't have that. But it's also us as a system. And I'll be honest with you, the ministry study really struggled with this last quadrennium when we proposed a quicker way to ordination, and the boards kicked back to us saying that's too fast, that the 2-year period is just not fast, is not enough time for us. Well, we figure out a way, because the young members, the young clergy members of the ministry study were the ones pushing for that, because they're the ones who just went through it. Okay, I understand the dilemma here, but once again, we're at the cusp of how do we reform an old way of doing things to something that's going to meet the needs of a new generation? The main thing needs to be the main thing, though. We cannot become so enamored with a provocative strategy that we forget our main purpose and mission, and that's to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. Or as one of my mentors, Bishop Roysanos, sort of transposes that, for the transformation of the world, we make disciples of Jesus Christ, because that was the way that he came into ministry and love of Christ, through the other way, so to speak. I don't care which way you want to do this, but that is what we're all about. So, what we must discover through experimentation and innovation is new strategies that will fulfill our mission. And that's partly why you're here, is to figure out those. Now, what we don't have is annual conferences are all over the map. So we've got to find a way to be a true learning organization for the things that you're doing that are making a difference and really providing that new direction, that all of us can hear that. And then the other part of that is to hear what failed. That's just as important. What have you tried and didn't work, and why? That if we can hear that and not replicate that, we've got to come up with a denominational way where the boards can all share both their successes and failures in a synergy that's going to change the whole ship direction. All right? So here's some thoughts. The boards of ordained ministry need to work with key constituencies of the church. And these are the ones that are standard for you all. You all know these intuitively. Perhaps the one that we need to push heavily, which I will, is the bishops and cabinets working in conjunction with the boards of ordained ministry. And I'm going to talk a little bit more directly about that. But it's also the annual conference staff need to be involved in this, as well as the board of laity or your laity period. Now, I know that there are lay members of most boards now, which are some of your most vital members, but we've got to figure a way to unleash our laity into the life of leadership in our denomination, or we're toast. There's a new concept, well, it's not new, but there's a concept called collective impact in the secular world. And this is vis-a-vis isolated impact. And in order to make a difference in a secular form, on the truly adaptive, wicked problems that the world is facing, public education, global warming, etc., it takes the whole community of private, public, corporate entities. Everybody needs to be at the table. The larger and more diverse the group, the better. But there are specific guidelines to what collective impact has to do to make it effective. All right, and I don't have time to share those guidelines, but they're all available through the literature. But this is the church reaching out to your network of beyond church, to the community, to the corporate settings, to the private settings, to the public settings, to all those partners to tackle these wicked problems. Now, that's the image that we've got to be for the community, but it's also the image that we've got to be as a denomination. We got a question. I know we're going to have time. Go ahead. I'm sorry. You're late. Okay, gotcha. You could definitely. You'll lead. Good. We need our laity because they have in our churches, we have every element of this collective impact in our midst. We've got the educators, we've got the public servants, we've got the government agencies involved in our laity. Think about this. In our laity, the collective impact would be easy if we just marshal them and set them loose. So it's really something that we've got to start working in a collective way. And leadership now is all about this networking and the collectiveness of who we can reach out to partner with. The days of the solo pastor and the solo entities are gone.
I'll go ahead. Is this on?
Go ahead.
I'll try to talk very loud. When you were talking about leveraging the...
Yep.
I think I agree with all of that. But I think one entity that's left off that list that needs to be there is the local church, because that's where the path into license and ordained ministry begins for everybody.
Amen. That's a presumption on my part. As we deal with systems, the local church is our foundation and core, and I agree totally with you on that one. Now, let me give you one common systems error, and that's sub-optimizing the parts of the whole. If you strengthen any single part of the whole, such as the Board of Ordained Ministry, such as the cabinet, and you don't look at the other, strengthening the other systems, you will not have any kind of substantial change. You're sub-optimizing one particular segment, and they will be isolated and even come into some jealousy and fear. So what we have to do is look at optimizing all the systems to the best of their abilities and to create systems that are strong and vital and sustaining in and of themselves. And this is an important one for us here, is the Board of Ordained Ministry has to have the best and brightest, and the cabinets and bishops have to be the best and brightest. Our trouble with this is the bishops probably aren't the best and brightest, but and present company included. But that's not within our, that's part of our system also, and so term limits is going to come up, and I'm for that, for bishops. But the whole point of this is all of us need to be optimized. You have to bring the whole boat up. And you can't lead with one group being the strongest, because systems theory will bring that group down because of these issues of jealousy and scarcity, fears, that one group is becoming too powerful. Everyone has to be optimized, and we've got to start thinking that way. Strengthen all of the parts of the leadership system. So on this particular systems diagram, I can't go into in depth in this, but it is starting with the local church, our children and youth, our camping programs, our campus ministry and higher education, our seminaries and courses of studies, leading to the DOMs and BOMs and lay leadership. And we need lay leadership on its own right, by the way, in terms of the ministry's studies dealing with this one. How do we become lay leaders who are not CLMs but have the full authority by enriching the entire laity, not just a small segment of them to lead churches, leading to bishops and cabinets? This is a cycle that everything needs to be optimized. We need to look at the whole system, because each of these has their own separate governing body and has siloed itself from the other areas. This is the dilemma for our systems. There exists no comprehensive development plan between the systems, and there exists no generative transitional process that is a handoff system between those separate parts. We don't have a way in which we try to get the camping program to tell us who's going to go into campus ministry in the next phase of their lives, that the campus ministries, we don't have a way to connect them to the seminaries. You get the whole idea. There's no generative way that everything is working together. And that's part of optimizing the whole system, is trying to find ways in which we get away from these problems or constraints that we have here. And then our larger UMC systemic problems, just as confined to the boards of ordained ministry, is that we have a passive recruiting system. We accept those who present themselves rather than recruitment of the best and brightest in our midst. It's whoever comes our way. We take care of you. We'll process you. That's not the way that the secular world does its best and brightest hiring. We lack an understanding of what we're looking for, and that's clergy effectiveness, and we're going to get to that in the last segment, hopefully. That's what we're here for today, is to figure out some of the end product, what we're looking for. The candidacy process discourages entrepreneurs. We mentioned that already, and innovators. The system overall protects ineffective clergy. And the system attempts to please people rather than set the high standards of acceptance. And this whole thing of being nice and loving and caring is hurting us in some ways. Not that we want to lose compassion. I mean, I'm all for compassion, folks. But the secular world doesn't run on compassion. Let me give you an example, a personal one. My nephew graduated college at a major university in Denver 2 years ago, and in accounting, and immediately was recruited by one of the big three accounting firms. And my nephew's a good kid. He's bright, he's caring, but he's not a company person. His thing was, I don't know about working overtime. I don't know about accepting this assignment. He lasted 3 months. And basically they said, you're not the type of person we're looking for. Bright, intelligent, sharp, but he didn't have the work ethic that they were looking for, and they just let him go. Now, my nephew's a good kid, but he's not designed for that environment either. We've gone the opposite way in this direction. oh, if you got some gifts, we'll nurture you and we'll love you and care for you. That's fine. But we also have to have the secular standards of what we need for the life of our church and the future. And that's all on our plates. Every one of us is involved in that. So the question is true leadership being recruited, cultivated, nurtured, trained, and exited if ineffective. That's all of our jobs. That's not just one part of it. That's not just the Board of Ordained Ministry, even though the discipline says it is. It's all part of our thing. And we've got to convince the local church of that also, by the way, that they need to send us not marginal people in ministry, that they need to work with us on ineffectiveness of the pastors. We've all got to be involved in the system for these issues. So, part of our discussion will be the boards and the cabinets really getting together today to hammer this out. But once our mission and purpose is clear, all the constituency must be aligned towards it. And the key ones for us today, which we have at the table, are the boards of ordained ministry, cabinets, and bishops. So, by the book of discipline, there is a historic firewall that we need to acknowledge. And the firewall is this. It presumes this. It doesn't actually spell this out, but it presumes this, that the bishop and cabinet are there to appoint and to supervise, and the board is there to credential, commission, and ordain. And never the twain shall meet. You don't interfere with each other in either capacity. And what I'm saying is, yes, but we're in real trouble because we've taken this to the far extreme. And what I want to say is fair process is important to keep this firewall there. I'm all for fair process, and we've got to keep the firewall in place when it comes to fair process. But everything else is up for grabs, and we need to collaborate generatively together. Part of it is our system also. Remember, Episcopalian, the bishop has a vote in ordination. So other denominations take this very differently than we do. But we have to acknowledge that the historical rootage is there in fair process for us. So the firewall continues in that the bishop and cabinet really, and this is our problem, decides how many and what types of clergy are needed, because we're on the cutting edge there, with the superintendents being out directly where the mission field is engaging. And then the board determining and selection of the gifts and graces. We're in real trouble when it comes to this issue, because the secular equivalent is this one. It's the difference between senior management, who is involved with new hiring and the number and types of hiring, and a human relations department that selects and hires and fires. If those two had a firewall between it in the secular world, we'd be the lowest economy in the world, by the way, whoever would practice this particular model. And what I'm saying is that this is the equivalent secularly of what we have right now. And we're not going to be able to leverage the best and brightest and what we need to do with our mission statement with this firewall in place. Okay? So we've really got to think through this. We've really got to find a way for our boards and our cabinets to come together in a kind of synergy that will take the church in a new direction when it comes to the issues of ordination, commissioning, selection, hiring, ineffectiveness, you name it. We've got to get this right. So, what we need to be aligned to, and that's the question. We've got to get it right. We've got to know what we're aligned to and what we're going to do in the strategy phase. We've got our mission statement, and all of us I believe in that totally right now. I'm totally committed to making disciples for the transformation of the world. So now we're going to break into the small groups, and we're going to take a half an hour. You may do 20 minutes, 10-minute break. You could take a break now. You could do whatever you want, but you got 30 minutes to take a break and to discuss some of these questions. We'll leave these up, by the way, How strong are your individual parts? What needs concentrating and strengthening? How will you go about that? Assess your alignment with each other. Is there a common missional purpose, and are you working from that premise? And how is your communication and alignment between board and cabinet? How can you improve that direction? All right? We'll leave these up, but you got 30 minutes now in which to engage each other and take a break, by the way. We want both of those. So if you want to do, either you guys decide how you want to. It looks like you're all taking a break. I don't blame you. But come back and engage these questions.